In the spring of 1950, on a misty morning in the Tollen Bog in Denmark, two brothers cutting peat for their stove uncovered a face. It was a man, his eyes gently closed, a stubble on his chin, a leather cap on his head. He was so perfectly preserved, they were certain he was a recent murder victim, and immediately called the police. But the man in the bog was not from their time. He had been lying in that silent, acidic darkness for 2,400 years, a ghost from the Iron Age. When scientists later examined the contents of his stomach, they found the humble remnants of his last meal, a simple porridge of barley and flax. But it was the other ingredients, the forgotten ones, that told a deeper story. Mixed in with the grains were the seeds of over 20 different wild plants. One of the most prominent was a humble, unassuming plant that we are now trained to call a weed. A plant that grows in your own backyard. A plant whose seeds contain a protein as complete and powerful as beef. This is the story of a lost superfood, a plant that nourished our ancestors for millennia, and the real reason it was deliberately erased from our food memory and reclassified as a weed. My name is Marcus Thornwood. For most of my life, I was a plant geneticist, working for the giants of the agricultural industry. My job was to create the perfect crops for their system, uniform, predictable, and most importantly, dependent. Dependent on our chemical fertilizers, our pesticides, and our patented seeds. We were taught to see the world in terms of yield and profit. We were taught to see any plant that we did not put in the ground ourselves as an enemy, a competitor, a weed. We spent billions of dollars developing poisons to kill them. It took me 35 years to realize we were poisoning the wrong thing. We were not just killing weeds. We were killing a vital part of our own heritage. We were erasing a library of free, nutritious food that nature has been offering us for thousands of our years. Today, I want to tell you about one of the most slandered and misunderstood plants of all, lamb squarters. Its scientific name is Chenopodium album, which means white goosefoot, a name inspired by the shape of its leaves. But it has 1,000 other names, names that tell the story of its fall from grace. In ancient times, it was simply called all good. Later, it became fat hen or pigweed, names that associated it with animal fodder. And today, most gardeners know it as a nuisance, a weed to be pulled and thrown on the compost pile without a second thought. But the history buried in the soil tells a different story. This was not a famine food scraped together in times of desperation. This was a staple. The Tolland man's last meal was not an anomaly. Archaeologists have found the carbonized seeds of lamb squarters in the storage pits and ovens of Iron Age and Viking settlements all across Europe. The Romans cultivated and ate it. For the people of the Neolithic and Bronze Ages, it was a foundational part of their diet. The great English writer Audrey Wynne Hatfield noted that lamb squarters was once the most valued vegetable for human beings and fodder for their animals. It was so important that in Britain, entire settlements were named after it. It was the king of greens for thousands of years. So what happened? How did a revered superfood become a reviled weed? The shift began in the 16th century when a new exotic green was introduced to Europe from Southwest Asia: spinach. Spinach was fashionable, a novelty for the gardens of the rich, and slowly, like a persistent rumor, the idea spread that spinach was superior. Lamb squarters became the food of the common folk, the peasants. And over centuries, it fell so far out of favor that we forgot it was food at all. It became something that simply gets in the way of the real vegetables. But here is the secret that has been hiding in plain sight for 500 years. In almost every nutritional metric that matters, lamb squarters is not just better than spinach. It blows it out of the water. Let's look at the facts. 1 cup of cooked lamb squarters leaves contains a staggering 464 milligrams of calcium. Spinach has just 30. That's more than 15 times the calcium. It has more iron, more protein, more vitamin B1, and more vitamin B2 than either spinach or cabbage. According to Joan Richardson's Wild Edible Plants of New England, lamb's quarters even outclasses spinach as a storehouse of protein, calcium, phosphorus, iron, vitamin C, and great amounts of vitamin A. It is a true superfood, a powerhouse of vitamins and minerals that our bodies are crying out for. And then there are the seeds. This is the most crucial part of the story, the part that has been almost completely erased. A single, healthy lamb's quarters plant can produce up to 75,000 tiny black seeds. For most of history, these seeds were harvested and eaten as a grain. And here's the headline. When dried, these seeds contain approximately 24 grams of protein per 100 grams. To put that in perspective, 100 grams of lean ground beef, a food we are told is the gold standard for protein, contains about 26 grams. We are talking about a plant seed, a weed, that has a protein content directly comparable to meat. But the story gets even better. It's not just about the quantity of protein, it's about the quality. Like its close relative, the celebrated superfood quinoa, lamb's quarters is a complete protein. This means it contains all 9 of the essential amino acids that our bodies cannot produce on their own. Most plant-based proteins are incomplete, meaning they are missing one or more of these essential building blocks. That's why you often hear that you need to combine foods like rice and beans to get a complete protein. But lamb's quarters has it all in one perfect package. Scientific studies have confirmed that it has a perfect amino acid balance with a high spectrum of lysine and methionine. It is a survival food of the highest order, a seed that could sustain human life all on its own. So I ask you again, why is this plant, this ancient, nutritious, and perfect food, classified as a weed? The answer is simple and brutal. Because it is too good. It is too generous. It is too independent. You cannot build a multi-billion-dollar business model on a plant that grows for free, that seeds itself with wild abandon, and that provides more nutrition than the crops you are trying to sell. Lamb's quarters is a direct threat to the entire system of agricultural dependency that has been constructed over the last century. Let's be clear about how this system works. After World War II, the factories that had been producing chemicals for warfare were repurposed to produce chemicals for farming. This was the dawn of the Green Revolution. It was sold to us as a miracle, a way to feed the world. But it was also the birth of a new kind of agriculture, an agriculture based on control. The system favors annual crops, corn, wheat, soybeans, that must be replanted every single year. The seeds for these crops are often F1 hybrids, a genetic trick that means if you save the seeds from your harvest, the next generation of plants will be weak and unproductive. This forces the farmer to go back to the seed company and buy new seeds every single year. These crops were also bred to be dependent on the chemical fertilizers and pesticides that the very same companies sell. It is a perfect closed loop of dependency. It is a treadmill that farmers can never get off. Lamb's quarters shatters this model. It is a pioneer plant, a volunteer. It thrives in the disturbed soil that our plows and bulldozers create. It asks for nothing. It doesn't need fertilizer. Its deep taproot is a master at pulling minerals from the subsoil. It doesn't need to be planted. Its seeds are already in the soil, a living seed bank, waiting for a sliver of light. A single plant can produce 75,000 seeds, and those seeds can remain viable in the soil for up to 40 years. It is a plant that embodies resilience and abundance. This is the real reason it is called a weed. Not because it is useless, but because it is uncontrollable. Because it competes with the profitable, patented crops of industrial agriculture. Because it offers a different model, a model of self-sufficiency. It is a living reminder that nature's default setting is abundance, not scarcity. And that is a very dangerous idea for a system that profits from creating and managing scarcity. I spent decades of my life on the other side of this fence. We were taught to see plants like lamb's quarters as the enemy. We saw them as competitors for sunlight, for water, for nutrients. It never occurred to us to ask if the weed itself might be more valuable than the crop we were trying to protect. We were so focused on maximizing the yield of our one chosen crop that we were blind to the free superior harvest that was growing right at our feet. But you can open your eyes. You can reclaim this lost knowledge. The first step is to learn to identify the plant. It's an upright annual with a stem that can be green or have reddish streaks, especially at the leaf axils. The most distinctive feature is the leaves. The young growing leaves at the top of the plant look like they have been dusted with a fine white powder, especially on the undersides. This mealy powder repels water and gives the plant one of its common names, white goosefoot. The leaves are somewhat diamond-shaped or triangular, with irregular teeth along the edges. As the plant matures, it produces dense clusters of tiny green, nondescript flowers, which then turn into the tens of thousands of black seeds. Be careful not to confuse it with its poisonous relative black nightshade, which has a different leaf shape and does not have the characteristic mealy powder. Once you can confidently identify it, you can start to harvest it. The best time to eat the leaves is when the plant is young and tender before it flowers. You can pinch off the top few inches of the growing tips. They can be eaten raw in salads, but they are best cooked. Why? Because, like spinach, lamb's quarters contains oxalic acid, which can interfere with calcium absorption. But the good news is that cooking neutralizes the oxalic acid. You can steam them, sauté them, or add them to soups and stews. The flavor is mild, rich, and earthy, far less bitter than many other wild greens. It's a taste that is both ancient and new. But please, do not stop with the leaves. Let some of the plants in your garden go to seed. In the late summer and fall, the flower heads will dry and turn brown. You can harvest these seed heads by stripping them into a paper bag. The process of separating the tiny seeds from the chaff is called winnowing. It is an ancient skill, a dance with the wind. You can pour the seed heads from one bucket to another in a gentle breeze, letting the wind carry away the lighter chaff while the heavier seeds fall into the bucket. It is a deeply satisfying process, a direct connection to our ancestors who performed this same ritual for thousands of years. These seeds are your reward. This is your protein, your survival food. You can grind them into a dark, nutty, gluten-free flour to make bread or pancakes. You can toast them and sprinkle them on salads for a nutritional boost. Or you can cook them as a porridge, just as the Talon man did 2,400 years ago. When you eat these seeds, you are not just consuming protein and minerals. You are consuming a story. You are taking part in a tradition that is thousands of years old. You are defying a system that wants you to forget that food can be free. In India, where this plant was never forgotten, it is called bathua. It is a cherished winter green, used to make dishes like bathua ka raita, a delicious yogurt dish, or stuffed into paratha bread. In the Himalayan region, the seeds are used to make a traditional gruel called fambra, and even fermented into mildly alcoholic beverages. They understood its value. They never let the corporations tell them that it was a weed. I want to tell you about something I witnessed years ago. I was visiting a small farm in upstate New York. The farmer was an old man in his 80s, and he had a small patch of lamb's quarters growing near his vegetable garden. I asked him why he didn't pull them out. He looked at me like I had asked him why he didn't throw away gold. He told me that his grandmother, who had immigrated from Eastern Europe, had taught him to eat this plant. She called it by a name from the old country. She had told him that in the hard times, this plant had kept her family alive. He said he would never pull it out because it was a gift from his grandmother, a connection to his past. That conversation changed my perspective forever. The ancient texts of India, like the Ayurveda, the Atharva Veda, and the Karak Samhita, all mention this plant. They describe it as anthelmintic, which means it can expel parasites from the body. They describe it as cardiotonic, good for the heart. They describe it as a digestive aid, a diuretic, and a laxative. They use the juice of the leaves to treat burns and skin irritations. This was not folk medicine based on superstition. This was a deep, empirical understanding of the plant's properties, developed over thousands of years of observation and use. Modern science is only now beginning to catch up. A 2015 review published in the Journal of Food Science and Technology confirmed many of these traditional uses, noting that the plant possesses anthelmintic, antipruritic, and anti-nociceptive properties, meaning it can relieve itching and pain. Researchers have even begun to explore its potential as an anti-cancer agent. Think about the implications of this. We have a plant that is a complete protein, a rich source of vitamins and minerals, a traditional medicine, and it grows for free in almost any disturbed soil, anywhere in the world. And we have been taught to call it a weed. We have been taught to poison it, to pull it up, to throw it away. This is not an accident. This is a deliberate erasure of knowledge, a systematic campaign to make us dependent on a system that profits from our ignorance. We have been taught to fear the wild, to see nature as something that must be tamed and controlled. We have been taught to see our gardens as a battlefield where we must constantly fight against the encroaching weeds. But what if we changed our perspective? What if we saw our gardens as a collaboration? What if we recognized that some of these weeds are actually gifts, offering us nutrition and resilience that our pampered, domesticated crops can only dream of? Lamb's quarters is not just a plant. It is a teacher. It teaches us about resilience, about the power of the forgotten, about the abundance that is all around us if we only have the eyes to see it. It teaches us that the most valuable things are often the things that we have been taught to despise. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen this plant in your garden? Did you know it was edible? Have you ever tasted it? I would love to hear your stories, your experiences, your questions. Let's start a conversation in the comments below. Let's share this knowledge and bring it back into the light. Real wealth is not in a bank. It is in the soil. It is in the seeds that you save. It is in the knowledge of how to feed yourself and your family from the land around you. This is the knowledge that was taken from us. This is the knowledge that we can now reclaim. The next time you see lamb's quarters growing in a field or a garden, I hope you will not see a weed. I hope you will see a survivor, a gift from the past, and a promise for a more abundant future. There is something deeply powerful about growing your own food. It is an act of rebellion against a system that wants you to be a passive consumer. It is a declaration of independence. And when you grow a plant like lamb's quarters, a plant that the system has tried so hard to erase, you are participating in a quiet revolution. You are keeping alive a thread of knowledge that connects you to the Talon man, to the Roman farmers, to the Neolithic villagers, to the Indian grandmothers who have been cooking bathwa for generations. I have spent my retirement trying to undo some of the damage I did in my career. I grow lamb's quarters in my own garden now. I let it seed itself freely. I harvest the leaves in the spring and the seeds in the fall. And every time I eat it, I think about all the people who came before me, all the people who knew the value of this plant. I think about the system that tried to make us forget, and I feel a small sense of victory. If this story has resonated with you, I encourage you to share it. The more people who know the truth about this remarkable plant, the harder it will be to Keep it buried. Let's bring all good back to our tables and back into our lives.